mai, haere mai. Welcome to the Maxim Institute podcast. My name is Jason Heal. I'm the Communications Manager at Maxim Institute, and this is our weekly short-form podcast. These podcasts are released in tandem with our weekly column and are a chance for you to hear in depth from the column's author about some of the thinking that went into producing their final piece. Natasha, welcome back to the podcast. It's always great to have you with us.
It's always great to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, we are talking about your recent column for Maxim, Beyond Emotivism. How does this make you feel? And what was the driving force or inspiration behind this column on emotivism?
So I've been noticing for a little while that Stuff, the news site,
yeah.
They have these kind of little survey at the end of their pieces. Only certain ones.
Yes,
I'm still trying to figure out what the algorithm is for why certain pieces and not others.
Yeah.
But it can be a very complex and quite, comprehensive article. And then at the end of it just says, how does this make you feel?
Yes.
You get an option of 2 emotions out of 6.
Out of 6, yeah.
And it just seems like they're pushing you to conceive of your response to the entire subject matter, whatever the article happens to be about.
Some complex political, economic, foreign policy discussion, and then how did this make you feel?
Summarise all of your responses to it. And the only important aspect of what you're taking away from this article, apparently, is how does this make you feel? So I decided that I'd write something about it.
I'm going to write about it. Well, give me an example then of one of these articles that kind of made you feel.
Right, so for this column itself, I actually had to go looking for one because it's something I had noticed along the way, but it wasn't like I was keeping track of them.
Yeah.
It was actually difficult then to find one this week, but I did. And it's an article, it's about a new stalking offence that the Labour Party are considering bringing in if they're successful in the next election. And the article itself goes into the details of a particular stalking offence, which was just horrific, and talks about the victim and all of these things that have happened. And then it has some of the comments that were made by the Justice Minister. It starts to go into, why didn't Labour do something about this sooner? And, it's quite a comprehensive piece of political commentary.
Yeah, so taking from all case, the case itself.
Look at the case that
political
happened.
Discussion.
Would this have happened if the law was already in place? Why have Labour been so slow with this law? Here's what the Justice Minister says about it. Here are some of the legal ramifications if we do bring in a new law.
Yeah.
It's a lot to consider.
Yeah. And then
we're not asked at the end of the
make
piece,
you feel?
Do you think this is a good idea?
Yeah.
Why? What do you think some of the consequences could be? No, how does this make you feel?
Yeah. So you've got that side of it, but then also you've written that it seems that in other areas, our emotions are kind of downplayed. So in one sense, we've got our emotions are all that matters in reacting to a news story, but then in other matters, you've written here an example of emotions.
Help me, Hera.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I think we can all kind of testify to this in our own lives. We're constantly told, if it doesn't make you happy, abandon it. Contemplate your emotions all the time. Your emotions are very important.
Yes.
They're very instinctive. They can tell you everything you need to know. Were you feeling uncomfortable? That's very important. Let's do something about that. But then, at the same time, we kind of are, it's just because that child... So the example from Help Me Hero, she's saying that a 17-year-old girl, it's not really a child anymore, but a 17-year-old girl is only wanting to vote for the ACT party because she's upset about how her parents are treating her at the moment and how she feels about the kind of the oppression of her parents, and she wants to act out against them by voting for
the
ACT
party. Yeah.
And I think, again, it's not that emotions are a useless form of interpreting one's environment. If the girl is feeling frustrated, it's a valid emotional response to what may be some of the restrictions in her life. So it's kind of, on the one hand, emotions, they're everything, and on the other hand, emotions are irrelevant, and we should just ignore them in the political process. And I think, actually, they're not nothing.
Yes.
They're not everything, but they're definitely not nothing either.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of the point of the column.
And you kind of came to, at the end of the column, a middle ground in that sense, didn't you? You said that our emotions are an essential tool, but there are a lot of other resources in there.
Absolutely. And I think, like with any tool, it's how are you using it? So your emotional response to something, it's almost like the pain instinct in a human. You know, you don't just take ibuprofen because you're in pain and ignore that there's probably some sort of source for the pain. And it's the same with our emotions. You know, if you have an emotional reaction, if you're feeling dissatisfied at the moment,
a negative emotional reaction,
negative in particular, but I mean also, you know, euphoria can sometimes let's take drugs so we feel euphoric. It's like, well, that's not actually a helpful use of emotion either. But if in this particular instance we're talking about our negative emotions, and if we're saying that we're feeling stressed, if we're feeling angry or dissatisfied or dismayed, these are all very relevant emotions. They're all the way that we're reading and experiencing the current climate. But ameliorating those feelings isn't going to actually resolve the situation itself. Just looking for change or looking for something new. What we actually need to say is what structurally is making me feel that way. So do I feel that way because when I go to the grocery store, I can't afford to buy basic groceries?
For my
do I
family,
feel that way because I don't feel like the country is heading in the direction that I want it to head in? Do I feel that way because I'm not hopeful about the education outcomes for my child? And when we look at those things, then we say, okay, does the government have a role to play in those structural things that are making me feel that way? If so, which of the representatives that I can vote for are going to be able to do something about that?
So it's kind of pushing past those, noticing the emotions, and then I guess being self-aware enough to process and push past and go, well, what's the source of this? And then what can I do about it? Or how can I have someone else help me do this, or deal with this, or fix this problem?
Who's best placed to do something about that?
And so that should, as we come up to the election here in New Zealand, those sort of things are the things that we should be questioning. Policy, who's going to be able to make those structural changes?
Absolutely.
So when we're in the voting booth on election day, we make an informed choice, not an emotive choice.
So especially not one that's based on the football results.
That's right, yes. Whether the All Blacks win or lose, we don't want to, that's not going to affect the outcome of our election, hopefully.
We'll see.
We'll see. Oh, Natasha, thanks for being with us. Great thoughts this week.
Thanks, Jason.
And now let's hear from Natasha as she reads her column.
Reading a recent article by Stuff, I was struck once again by a strong sense of frustration at their "How does this story make you feel?" survey. Frustration, however, was not one of the 6 options provided. I suppose I could have chosen a combination of sad, concerned, and angry, but I was limited to 2 feelings. Recent research indicates a minimum of 27 distinct emotional categories. Restricting my choice to 2 seemed unfair. I was now both frustrated and resentful. The article in question discussed a new stalking offence that the Labour Party are considering if they are successful in the upcoming election. The story outlined the horrific details of one particular stalking incident, interspersed with a commentary on Labour's slowness to consider a change to the law and statements from the Justice Minister. The threads of personal and community tragedy, political analysis and policy pros and cons were woven into a complex web, evoking emotional reactions and rational deliberation. The reader was asked to summarise all of these thoughts and feelings into 2 of 6 emojis: happy face, thoughtful face, mad face, sad face, face, or a thumbs up. If only they provided a facepalm emoji. If this degree of emotivism and oversimplification were restricted to the fine people at Stuff, I wouldn't lose any more sleep over it. However, research indicates that the knee-jerk emotional reactions endorsed by Stuff are also driving the way that we vote. Findings of the Stanford Business School demonstrate that voters' choices depend on events that affect their emotional state, even when those events are unrelated to government activity. To test this, the research team analysed the effect that the outcome of sporting competitions has on voting patterns. An incumbent is less likely to be voted for if there has been an unexpected sporting loss in the lead-up to the election day. Incumbents are more likely to be re-elected if there is an unexpected victory. As a non-sports fan, I can't say what might be happening in the world of rugby around election time, but surely anything that holds true for sport can hold true for other beloved hobbies and life events. Advice columnist Hera Lindsay Bird even attributes the libertarian tendencies of a 17-year-old ACT supporter to her emotional frustration at not being listened to by her parents. So are emotions our enemy come election day? I don't believe so. Our emotions are an essential tool in our decision-making arsenal, but there are a lot of other resources in there. Our ability to reason, to ask good questions and critically assess the answers, our intuitions, instincts and reflexes honed over years of experience and habit. The problem arises when we limit our view of the world to just one of these. We must ask ourselves reflective questions like, why am I feeling this way? What practical changes can address the circumstances that have led to this feeling? Can or should the government play a role in this particular situation, and which elected representative is best placed to influence change? If we can find answers to these questions, we will be one step closer to a smiley face for Aotearoa in New Zealand.
Thanks for listening to the Maxim Institute podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us and keep up with the rest of our research and analysis of politics and policy in New Zealand, you can sign up on the homepage of our website to get our monthly forum email and invitations to future Maxim Institute events. You can search and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. From the team at Maxim, mā te wā, goodbye for now.